Hi, I'm back with 25 books of 2025. Calling from 2024 in Great Yarmouth, and this one here, okay, it's literally this is the book I read. This is actually the same copy I read when I was at school. This copy goes back many years ago. It's Roald Dahl's Danny the Champion of the World. It was quite fun reading this book again. Now, interesting too, okay, because after this, he started working collaborating with the author Quentin Blake, who did all his illustrations. When he moved into more, okay, James and the Giant Peach, Charlie and the Chocolate Factory, the BFG. This was his original illustrator, and now, okay, when versions come out, they're illustrated by Quentin Blake. This is the original illustrator, okay? The original illustrator is Jill Bennett, okay, of the Roald Dahl novels, which is just interesting, just seeing his images again. I mean, they're a lot more realistic, okay, a bit more than the, caricatured whimsy, okay, of Quentin Blake, even though I do love Quentin Blake's work, okay? So, read the blurb. Danny is brought up by his father, who's a marvellous storyteller and genius with motor cars, kites, and fire balloons, and a wizard at catching pheasants. This book is about the adventures they have together, and it's full of action and great fun. Hyman New Windmills publication. Okay, illustrations by Jill Bennett. Right, and it starts off with Danny talking about his life. Okay, he's a young boy, right? And when I was 4 months old, my mother died suddenly, and my father was left to look after me all by himself. I had no brothers or sisters, so throughout my boyhood just from the age of 4 months onward, was just the two of us, my father and me. We lived in an old gypsy caravan behind the filing station. My father owned the filing station and the caravan had a small field behind it, but that was about all he owned in the world. It was a very small filling station on a small country road surrounded by fields and woody hills. Right. When I was a baby, my father washed me and fed me and changed my nappies and all the millions of things a mother normally does for her child. An easy task for a man, especially when he had to earn his living at the same time, repair motor car engines, serving customers with petrol. But that's Danny's life, okay? Danny's life, and he's very happy. He's very happy with it. They live a simplistic life, but it's a very good life too, okay? It's the countryside I thought. And also, this is Danny looking back on his life with childhood eyes, okay? Very much evoking his glasses. This is Danny as an adult looking back on his life. So it's a bit more rose tinted, okay? A bit more nostalgic, okay? So, and one thing is this, okay, this actually has an early cameo of the BFG. Now, BFG will come out, okay, for several more years, the Big Funny Giant. But the idea, okay, is Danny's father created the BFG, right? And the BFG now, the Big Funny Giant, lives, as the runt with all the other races of giants, okay, who eat children, and he gives children dreams. That's the BFG that we know and love. This is the early bird cameo of the Big Funny Giant, right? One of them was about, gone on for at least 50 nights, was about an enormous fellow called the Big Funny Giant, or the BFG for short. The BFG was 3 times as tall as an ordinary man, and his hands were as big as wheelbarrows. He lived in a vast underground cavern not too far from our filling station, and he came out in the open when it was dark. Inside the cavern he had a powder factory, which made more than 100 different kinds of magic powder. Right. The Big Funny Giant makes his magic powders out of dreams of children dream when they are asleep. How? Dreams, my love, are very mysterious things. They float around in the air like little clouds, searching for sleeping people. Can you see them? Nobody can see them. Then how does the BFG catch them? So, in the BFG that we know and love, okay, which came out several years later, the BFG is creating dreams. However, in this, the BFG is looking for dreams, is hunting dreams. As you see, is a very interesting kind of thing. So in this, the BFG is more of an antagonist, and also has an illustration, a very illustration of what became the BFG. You can see it there. See, that's the BFG, as illustrated by Jill Bennett. Right, absolutely. That's kind of thing, okay, and also, okay, the kind of cavern where you can make 100 different kinds of powder. That's also, in a way, okay, a bit of a reference to like Willy Wonka's chocolate factory. You know, 100 kinds of different kind of magic powder. That was something that would be out of sight, okay, in Wonka's factory, if you will. So that's his life. That is an absolute life, okay. And also the fact that Danny's education doesn't begin for another 2 more years. Supposed to go when he was 5, actually goes when he was 7, because his father wants to keep him closer to him because things can teach him more. Okay, here we are. I don't want to send you to school quite yet. In another 2 years, you will have learned enough here to with me to be able to take a small engine completely to pieces and put it together all by yourself. After that, you can go to school. You probably think my father was crazy trying to teach a young child to be an expert mechanic, but as a matter of fact, he wasn't crazy at all. I learned fast and I adored every moment of it. And luckily fast, no one came to school to ask why I wasn't attending. So, at the age of 7, Danny can take a what part an engine and put one together, and put absolutely one together. And then one night, Danny's father doesn't come back till it's very, very late, and he finds out where his father's been. His father's been poaching. Okay, he had to feel the rush. He's from a family of poachers. And interesting too, okay, because in this community, everyone is into poaching. Every single male of their community, okay, has done poaching in their lives, okay? They're from a family of poachers, which is basically going to someone's field and essentially taking what's there. Right, here you go. Right. Poaching? Not really, no. Poaching means going to the woods into the dead of night and coming back with something for the pot. Poachers in other places poach all sorts of things, but here it's always pheasants. Miss stealing them? Said aghast. Don't look like that. Poaching is an art. A great poacher is a great artist. Is that what you were doing in Hazel's wood, Dad? Poaching pheasants? I was practicing the art of poaching. Oh, shot! My father a thief? You gentle, loving man? So Danny has a bit of a question, okay? Suddenly, he's like seeing his father in a new light, okay? Because as we grow up, okay, we start to see more of our parents, okay? They're human after all. And this is Danny actually realising that. He's a wonderful, beloved father. And then when you explain, okay, about the mentality of poaching, you can understand why people do it. Right, here we are. Let me tell you about this phony pheasant shooting business. First of all, it is practiced only by the rich. Only the very rich can afford to rear pheasants just for the fun of shooting them. Right, down when they grow up. These wealthy idiots spend huge sums of money every year buying baby pheasants from pheasant farms and rearing them in pens that are big enough to be put out into the woods. In the woods, the young birds hang around like flocks of chickens. They're guarded by keepers and fed twice a day on the best corn till they're fat they can hardly fly. Right, the beaters are hired who walk through the woods clapping their hands and making as much noise as they can to drive the half-tame pheasants towards the half-baked men in their guns. After that, it's bang, 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 and they come down. Right. So, I also makes it clear, okay, that real poachers don't use guns. They use other ways. They use more sneaky ways. A sticky hat, drugging them, okay? And also, when it comes to the antagonist in all this, okay, that's Victor Hazell. Victor Hazell, um, God, if you want a kind of caricature of an early version, okay, of Victor Hazell, not for the cruelty, there's an element of the twits about him, okay? That's a Roald Dahl story, which is absolutely loved. Element of the twits about him, and a little bit in a way, okay, just a description, okay, of Ruka Salt's father in the Chinese chocolate factory. So that's what it reminded me of, okay. So it comes to Victor Hazell. I was pausing to hear something about Mr. Victor Hazell. He was a brewer of beer and he owned property stretched to miles around either side of the valley. All the land around him belonged to us except everything on both sides of the road, everything except for a small patch of ground on our filling station stood. That patch belonged to my father. It was a small island in the middle of a vast ocean on Mr. Hazell's estate. And Hazel is a roaring snob, and because he was rude to Danny, okay, basically saying, "Get your mucky hands off my car," and that upset Danny's father so much that he said, "I won't ever serve you," and says that Hazel's been making their life trouble, sending people basically saying, okay, that oil's bad, and Danny should be in school, and Danny's badly educated and living in squalor, lives in a traveller's caravan, right? And one thing is this. Now, there's always been a question mark, okay, about the year this came out. Now, interesting, okay, it's when I was reading this, I was wondering about what year it was set, okay. Now, I was home from school and we spent most of the day in the workshop decarbonising the cylinders on Mr. Pratchett's Austin 7. It was a little car built in 1933, a tiny miracle machine that still ran as sweetly as ever did, that was now more than 40 years old, okay. So, now more than 40 years old, that means this book is set in 1973, okay. And this is Danny as an adult looking back on the year 1973. However, if you read this, if you see the film as well, there's an element of this being set feeling more like 1940s, 1950s. That is actually what I like about it. Even though a year is suggested, that It also could be set in the 1970s, but more in one kind of like 50s and 40s, if you will, than the actual, very more to the present day. Right. Because this book actually came out, the story came out in 1973, but it doesn't feel like it is set in 1973. By the way, I wasn't actually born in 1973, I came several years later. Right. And also, when it comes to, okay, um, what happens to Danny's father? What happens is he goes out poaching, and Danny doesn't come back. Danny, being tenacious enough, okay, actually gets in a car. He's 9 years old. He actually drives a car over to Hazel's Wood, finds his father in a pit, gets him out. The father's broken his foot, and gets him out of there and calls the doctor. Right, and the doctor is absolutely cool with this and sets his foot and gets sure he's safe and gives him sleeping pills, which he actually doesn't take. They become a plot point later on. And when it comes to Mr. Hazell, because they want revenge on Mr. Hazell for what he's doing, he's organised a massive pheasant hunt, and they want to get revenge on him. That's the actual plan. They need to figure out how. And if you wonder, okay, if once again, this is the genius of Roald Dahl. Now I know in his life he's a controversial figure. I am not even going to deny that. In his lifetime, made some very controversial statements. However, once again, if you ever wonder, okay, if Mr. Hazell in his book deserved what he got, he actually did. Not the fact that he was rude to a child. Oh, he gets what's coming to him. Listen to this bit, okay? Right. Right. Dr. Surgeon said, I saw him do a filthy thing once. What? An appointment with me at my surgery. He needed an injection of some sort. I've forgotten what. By chance, I was looking out the window as he drove up. It drove up to his whacking great Rolls Royce. I saw him get out and saw my great old dog Bertie dozing on the doorstep. And you know what that loathsome Victor Hazell did? So stepping over old Bertie, actually kicked him out of the way with his riding boot. He didn't. Oh yes, he did. What did you do? Sitting in the waiting room, I picked out my oldest, bluntest needle I could find. Then I rubbed the point of it on a nail file to make it blunter still. By the time I got through it, it was the blunt in a ballpoint pen. I called him over and told him to lower his pants and bend over. When I ran that needle into his fleshy backside, he screamed like a stuck pig. And he's never been back since. So if you think Hazel didn't deserve it, okay, for being a horrible child and setting his trap to catch the poachers, he abused a dog. He gets what's coming to him. He abused that dog. Okay, so if you hate any book of fiction, okay, if you hurt an animal, yeah, you got what's coming to you. You've absolutely what's coming for you, right? So okay, so Danny and his father get the idea, okay, to basically poach all the pheasants, okay, right? Because Hazel's got this massive hunting party coming up. He's all the local bigwigs who actually hate his guts, but he puts on a good spread and they shoot loads and loads of hundreds of pheasants, okay, on his grounds. Here you go. Right. And it's Mr. Hazell is worth every penny, but you know why? It makes it feel important. For one day in a year, he becomes a big cheese in a little world, and even the Duke of Somerset sits on the back and tries to remember his first name when they say goodbye. Right. But so they get the idea, okay? They get the idea to get raisins, a way to poach a pheasant. And the most effective way is to get a raisin with a bit of string and tie it through it. Then the pheasant eats the raisin, it gets stuck in his throat, and then it kind of shocks him, okay? He's stunned. And then, okay, they poach the pheasant. Now, you could argue about animal cruelty, since I'm the one, okay, said you kicked a dog. However, okay, this is an earlier time, and yes, we can argue about animal cruelty at a certain point. I acknowledge that it is animal cruelty what we're doing to these pheasants, right? So, but however, for the sake of this book, let's let it pass. Here we are. Right, we're forgetting the raisins, Dad. The raisins, now listen to me. We take a raisin, we soak it till it swells, then we make a tiny slit in one side with a razor blade. Then we hollow out a little side, then we open up your red capsules and pour the powder into the raisin. And get needle and thread and we sew it up. With a nice clean looking raisin topped with sleeping pill powder. I know we'd have to put any pheasant to sleep. Don't you think so? And that's it. That's how they're going to do. They're going to poach all the they're going to knock out all the pheasants. They're going to knock out all the pheasants and ruin Hazel's party. That's the thing. Interesting book as well, okay, is there also is a thread of realism running through this. They can argue, okay, Danny and his father Actually, Potion Always Friends has the element of whimsy. However, one thing I do respect, it also has a touch of reason about it. Now, when it comes to Danny's life, there's little things, okay, where regarding the school teachers. Now, obviously, okay, you expect a teacher, okay, to be like Miss Trunchbull Matilda. If it comes to Roald Dahl character, okay, and Wicked Teacher, she's number one. That's because she's absolutely cool and I absolutely adore her. But the thing is, when it comes to teachers in this, when Danny does go to school, he's only been at school for 2 years, okay, at this point, right, is Captain Lancaster, right, Captain Lancaster. Now, he'd been a captain in the army against, during the war against Hitler, and that was why he still called himself Captain Lancaster instead of just plain Mister. My father said it was an idiotic thing to do. There are millions of people still alive, he said, who fought in that war. Most of them wanted to forget all about it, about the whole beastly thing, especially coming military titles. But the thing is, okay, also in the school is Mr. Shoddy, right. Now, this bit here, okay, it's about Mr. Shoddy, who's a nice teacher. It's a funny thing about Mr. Shoddy, so Mr. Snoddy, was that he always brought a glass of water with him into class, and he always kept sipping right through the lesson. Everyone thought it was a glass of water, right? Everyone that is, except me and my best friend Sydney Morgan. We knew differently. That's how we found out. One day during break, I went to Mr. Solly's study to give him a bill, and Miss Sydney Morgan came with me. Right, he didn't come for any special reason. He just happened to be together at the time. As we went in, we saw Mr. Snoddy standing by his desk, filling the famous glass of water, bottle labelled Gordon's gin. He jumped a mile, but I didn't tell anyone because he's a good teacher, and apparently his wife's an absolute shrew. Don't want him to lose his job, so they keep quiet the fact that a teacher is drinking on the job. Right, so if you will, which by the way, we're not washing the 21st century, we wouldn't even wash at the time period. But the fact is, okay, they're given a bit of leeway. Right, not basically anyone. Danny tells his father, and his father's like, well, don't tell anyone, okay, his wife's a shrew. Okay, so, here you go. And also, there's bits like into this book as well, where you can actually see things from the father's counterpoint. When is Danny's birthday? His father wants to throw him a party. Right, if I was to throw him a party and invite all his friends over, and like, Danny always said, I never invited any other children to come to my home after school on any weekends. Was it because I didn't have any good friends? I had loads of them. Some of them were super friends, especially Sydney Morgan. Then again, perhaps if we lived in the same street as some of them instead, or way out in the country, these wouldn't have been different. But again, perhaps they wouldn't. So, you see, there were reasons I didn't want anyone to come back and play with me because I was such a good time at being alone with my father. Right, so... But the thing is, from father's point of view, it might have sat there and thought, okay, does my son just moving his friends around to my house because is Danny secretly shamed? Which maybe something the father actually thought of. And there's a moment in this book, okay, where both Sydney and where Sydney and Danny are actually caned, okay? They're caned because Danny let slip, okay, whilst they were doing their times table, and they're both the one of getting caned. And the dad is absolutely furious about this. Absolutely. To the point, okay, he actually wants to go over, okay, and knock over the cap, basically go after the captain, even though daddy says not to, because did your father do this when you were young? No. I did kind of like Danny's maturity to this. Danny's a very kind of self-reliant child. In fact, he doesn't want to tell his father, and when he does, he actually has to calm his father down. Danny is a very, very mature boy for only 9 years old. Here you go. And also, okay, one thing I also did like is, obviously, the mother died, okay, was only 4 months old. It's when Danny's asking, okay, about his mother, if she was into poaching, and even though we never met this woman, the fact is, okay, the father never remarried after his mother died, after the mother died, you can kind of see how much he loved her. Here you go. And this bit here, okay, it's like, the fact is the mother went poaching too, which I thought was a really kind of nice element. Here we are. Right. When Mum was here, did you go out very often at night, or was it a now and then? You mean poaching? Often, at least twice a week. Did she mind? Of course she didn't mind. She came with me. Oh, she didn't. She certainly did. She came with me every single time, and just until you were born. She had to stop then. She said she couldn't run fast enough. Right. Right. Or was the only reason she went because she loved you, Dad, or because she wanted to be with you, or did she go because she loved poaching? Both. She did it both for the reason you mentioned. Right. Here you go. Were you afraid you might get hurt? Yes, Danny, I was, but it was marvellous to have her along. It was a great sport to your mother, always. I just loved These little elements here about the mother being supportive. Absolutely. So what they do is they sneak onto the grounds, they avoid the guards, they drop the raisins, they pick them up. The pheasants actually fly up to roost, okay, and then they fall. But I thought it was a nice detail. Very, very nice detail, okay. Or suddenly Danny's sitting there, suddenly all these pheasants are falling on him like rain. Once again, a very, very nice detail. So, and also, just these very nice elements of this book, just to ruin Hazel's day. That's the absolute thing. And then, once again, in the fact that everyone actually knows, I absolutely love this community of people. The doc knows, the copper knows, everyone knows, okay, even the taxi driver knows. Here you go. Because the taxi driver, okay, Charlie Kinch, he's a pheasant hunter too. He knows loads. He's actually impressed by them when they call a taxi. I just love that. That is just hilarious, okay? After they do this pheasant hunt of 200 pheasants, they contact Charlie, okay, Charlie Lynch, who is a taxi driver taken back, who's impressed by it. It's like, why never think of that? That's brilliant. That's absolute genius. Right. I just love that element. Absolutely love that element. And then what to do with the pheasants, once again, in this kind of out there version of Roald Dahl that we all know and love, it's they stashed the pheasants, all 200 of them, under a baby. And a little baby, young Christopher Clipstone, in a special push and pram which Charlie's father actually made for him. Okay, absolutely massive one. So this poor baby, okay, has absolutely no idea, okay, that even the mother, that she's pushing all these pheasants underwards. Right, absolutely, absolutely, it's genius. Right, and it absolutely freaks out the mother, okay, when all these pheasants come back to life. Here you go. With the weight of the child suddenly lifted away, and a great cloud of pheasants rose up out of a gigantic plough. There must have been well over 100 of them, and the whole sky above us was filled with huge brown birds clapping their wings. Sleep doesn't last forever, Dr. Spencer was shaking his head sadly. It always wears off by the next morning. But as they're so dopey to fly, they actually park themselves at um, Charlie's father's garage, which absolutely infuriates Hazel. And the thing is this, okay, it's once again Roald Dahl's whimsy is coming in as well. Okay, Roald Dahl not taking himself too seriously. It could have been a very, very serious novel, but it's not. It's the element of whimsy, but not by Danny. It's the world around him, okay, that's more hysterical than what he is. Right. So when Hazel comes along, okay, and he's told when to get his pheasants back, because there's now his estate, Sunny Cater on the grounds, okay, with his arch nemesis, right? And here we are. Right, they're not your pheasants, my father said at last, they're mine. Don't lie to me, man. I'm the only person around here who has pheasants. They're on my land, my father said quietly. They flew onto my land, and so as long as they stay on my land, they belong to me. Don't you know the rules, you both old blue-faced baboon? Here you go. So then the cop comes along, Sergeant Enoch Samwells, who can't pronounce his H's correctly, right? Which makes it even more hilarious, right? Sergeant Samwell had a funny habit or something to put in letter H in front of words and shouldn't have a H there at all. So we thought to balance things out, it would take away the H from all the words that should have begun with a letter. Right, here you go. So whilst Hazel was screaming, "These are my pheasants," right? These are my pheasants, and this rogue, pointing to my father, has enticed him out of my woods onto his filthy little fin station. Enticed them, did you? Of course he enticed them. This is a very interesting accusation. Very interesting indeed, because I never ever heard of no one henticing a pheasant across 6 miles of fields and open country. How was this henticing was performed, Miss Hazel, if I may ask? Don't ask me how he did it. I don't know, but he did it. Am I correct that the absolute accurate in thinking that day is the day of your great shooting party, Mr. Hazel? That's hilarious. That's absolutely hilarious. So what the pheasants actually do, okay, is trash Hazel's car, and then he drives off, okay, and also everyone, okay, gets a reward, okay, and there's only 6 pheasants left to go to the sergeant, to go to the doctor, to go to Danny's father. Actually buys an oven, okay, to actually enjoy the pheasants. So yeah, because 6 of them didn't fly out, they didn't make it sadly. So yes, so I did enjoy this book. Interesting the kind of time period. I like Danny's whimsy. I like this early Roald Dahl. I love the illustrations. I like the early version, okay, the BFG. I like the fact, okay, that this was a very, very early Roald Dahl novel before he kind of found his more whimsical, fantastical style that he was more known for. So I liked how realistic it was and down to earth. This was an element of Roald Dahl we never saw after books like the BFG or China Chocolate Factory came out. So no, I did actually like this. I think the early books of an author are always the most interesting. So, and I just love how whimsical it was. I mean, at various points, okay, you can see these elements of his later books, okay, with characters, okay, who tells H's differently, okay, or a, um, terrible teacher, that's definitely, later on inspired Matilda, or little things like the BFG, who came back into a very different development where he gave dreams instead of taking them away. So I actually did enjoy Daniel Champion of the World. I think it's one of his best novels because, as it was one of his earliest, okay, for children at least, one of his earliest for children, it's got a very, very kind of warm kind of honesty about it, okay, of a 9-year-old boy, okay, who does something amazing. That's what it is. And I have seen the film with Jeremy Irons, and the film is very good too. I'm signing off here. Bye now.